Welcome back, everyone. It's the Bourbon Judge. We are back at it with some Kansas City bourbon. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and pour this real quick. So this is the brand new J. Rieger's 90 proof straight bourbon whiskey. Really excited about this one. Honestly, in kind of like in the background, I've been a big fan of Kansas City whiskey, Kansas City bourbon for quite some time. So if you go back a while ago, actually, one of my patrons, actually a longtime patron, good friend of mine, my buddy David, him and his brother are from Kansas City. So he was kind enough, he sent me a whole flight of various different Kansas City bourbons and whiskeys. And I had a chance to try them on the channel and I actually enjoyed pretty much almost all of them. I even ranked them in order. Oddly enough, in that episode, what came in the first place? J. Rieger. Yes, it did. But that was J. Rieger's Kansas City whiskey. And I'm going to get into the difference of Kansas City whiskey versus now what they're making. In addition to their Kansas City whiskey, they're also making bourbon as well. But again, when I did that episode, I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot about Kansas City whiskey as a whole. Pour a little bit more of this. Learned a lot about Kansas City whiskey as a whole. And again, I've been a fan of Kansas City whiskey for a while. And really excited to try this brand new product coming from J. Rieger. So thanks, by the way, J. Rieger, for sending over this little sample for me to get on the channel. So when you think back about, even when I did that episode, like there are a lot of brands in the Kansas City area, Kansas City, Missouri area, if you will. You have, of course, obviously J. Rieger's, you have Union Horse, you have West Bottoms. So there are a lot of different Kansas City whiskey based distilleries in the Kansas City, Missouri area as a whole. But J. Rieger's is probably the one that's like the most well-known across the board. They probably almost the biggest as well from that standpoint. So when you think back about J. Rieger, their story is, so they were actually a distillery way before Prohibition. Obviously with Prohibition is shut down, and they were the first distillery in the Kansas City area to reopen after Prohibition. So that's pretty cool by itself. They the story goes, when the family started to back up, they were able to partner with the late and great Dave Pickerell. So when you think about Dave Pickerell, before he passed, he helped so many different up-and-coming brands to start up, like with his knowledge, his insight, how to distill, best practices, you name it. So Dave Pickerell, I mean, his presence is still felt to this day. So you know what? On that note, before we even go further, cheers to the late and great Dave Pickerell. Okay, all right. There we go. We'll get into that a little bit more. Want a little bit more of that. All right, so what else do we know about just J. Rieger as a whole? So again, the first distillery in the Kansas City area to start back after Prohibition. Check out that episode. I kind of dived into everything about J. Rieger when I did the whole episode about just Kansas City whiskey as a whole. But when you think about Kansas City whiskey, so what's the difference, Judge, of traditional Kansas City whiskey versus bourbon? All right, so Kansas City whiskey is known for historically basically taking 50% rye, 50% bourbon, blending them together, and then adding in roughly typically about 15-year-old sherry. So they take, typically, younger rye whiskey, younger bourbon, they mix it together, they blend it together, and then they would add in 15-year-old sherry. It doesn't have to always be exactly 15-year-old, but they would add in sherry, and essentially they're just kind of using that sherry to kind of make it a little bit sweeter, a little bit more well-rounded. That was always known as the Kansas City whiskey as a whole, right? So J. Rieger, they still make Kansas City whiskey, but they also make bourbon now. They have their bottled and bond bourbon, and they just came out with this brand new straight bourbon that's a 90 proof. So when they came out with this one, a couple cool things about it, and I have to give them credit for it. Number one, they're using a sweet mash process, which again with sweet mash, everything going into the mash bill is all brand new, right? So all brand new. So it's a little bit more expensive, so I give them credit for that. And then also number two, they're using a double distillation process. They're using a pot still as well as a column still. So a lot more time, effort. So we're gonna get into this bad boy because I'm kind of excited about this one. I really am. All right, let's go ahead and get into this real quick. So this is 90 proof. MSRP on this one, not too bad actually. About 35 bucks, so $35 from an MSRP standpoint. And I will say availability of Rieger's products, I can find them myself locally in Delaware, Maryland area, even in New Jersey as well. But I've traveled all over. I've seen J. Rieger's in multiple different states, so the availability of Rieger's products are pretty easy to find in most places. You can also get it online as well, which is pretty cool. All right, let's go ahead and dive into this real quick. So from a nose standpoint, this is very nice on the nose. Wow, so this is a true straight bourbon. So on the nose, I get a really soft, almost like a soft, like caramel meets like some apples and some baking spices. It's very soft on the nose, but it's soft, but it's robust at the same time from the standpoint of like they blend so well together. You get a really good representation of the caramel, some apples, some baking spices as well. Really nice actually. For a 90 proof, this is actually really nice on the nose, honestly. This is really nice on the nose. All right, so what's the mash bill, Judge? Again, because this is a true straight bourbon, the mash bill is 56% corn, 30% rye, and 14% malted barley. So that's a pretty cool mash bill. That's a little bit different. You don't see that quite often. And the age, they don't give you the exact age, but they do say that the whiskey is aged at least 4 years. So it's aged at least 4 years. It could be 4.5, it could be 5 years, but they're saying it's aged at least 4 years. So that's cool. All right. Nice nose. Now I'm ready to dive into this whiskey. All right, here we go. All right, real quick, 3 quick easy favors. Number 1, hit the like button. Number 2, drop a comment. Let me know, have you ever tried a J. Rieger product or just Kansas City whiskey as a whole? But more important, have you tried the new J. Rieger straight bourbon whiskey at 90 proof? If so, let me know your thoughts on it. Last but not least, please make sure you all subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you get notification each and every time I release new content. Cool? All right. Cheers. Wow, that's nice. Creamy, soft. For a 90 proof, the palate, the finish is here. It stays. It's actually pretty consistent. Let me get a little bit more. This is actually really nice. For a 90 proof whiskey, I know the Rieger family created this because they wanted to have essentially like a deli sipper, something that is number 1, affordable, it's good quality, and that you can find, right? So those 3 things: affordable, good quality, and you can find a true, really good everyday deli sipper at 35 bucks. If you are looking to try a different bourbon that you haven't had before, and odds are a lot of people I know in the whiskey world, we're all big, oh, everything has to come from Kentucky, or it has to be a craft distillery, you know, primarily like in different states. If you're looking to try a Kansas City based distillery that was known for only making Kansas City whiskey, but now making some pretty good bourbon, I would go ahead and give J. Rieger a try. 35 bucks, can't beat this. This is a great deli sipper. I'm buying a bottle the first time I see it myself. Until the next time, this is a buy. As we say in this courtroom always, my friends, peace, cheers, and most important, salute. Take care. Not bad, J. Rieger. Not bad at all. All right. Pour a little bit more. See you guys.